Good morning, students. Welcome to the online classes of Triveni Memorial Senior Secondary School. Today, we are going to start our third unit of English Reader Book for Class 8. The name of the unit is Literacy, and the chapter, that is section 1 of the unit, is Hard Times. Here, it is written by one of the greatest novelists of his times. The name is Charles Dickens. It is an extract from the novel he wrote. And in this extract, he has tried to show how the fact-based system of education was being imposed in schools across England during those times. Okay, so let's find out what's going on. Now, what I want is facts. Teach these boys and girls nothing but facts. Facts alone are wanted in life. Plant nothing else and root out everything else. You can only form the minds of reasoning animals upon facts. Nothing else will ever be of any service to them. This is the principle on which I bring up on my own children, and this is the principle on which I bring up these children. Stick to facts, sir. Now here in the first paragraph itself, we get to know that somebody is asking the others to use the facts to apply on the children. Okay, and he tells that fact is the basic need, basic root, and it must be applied to everybody. It must be taught to everybody. Nothing else other than the facts. And he even says that this is the principle that he applies on his own children too. And he says, we can only form the minds of reasoning animals upon facts. He even gives the example of animals. The scene was a plain, bare, monotonous wall of a schoolroom. The speaker's square forefinger emphasized his observations by underscoring every sentence with a line on the schoolmaster's sleeve. The emphasis was held by the speaker's square wall of a forehead, which had his eyebrows for its base, while his eyes found commodious salaries in two dark caves overshadowed by the wall. The emphasis was held by the speaker's mouth, which was wide, thin, and hard-set. The emphasis was held by the speaker's voice, which was inflexible, dry, and dictatorial. The emphasis was held by the speaker's hair, which blistered on the skirts of his bald head, a plantation to furs to keep the wind from its shining surface, all covered with knobs, like the crust of a plum pie, as if the head had scarcely warehouse room for the hard facts stored inside. The speaker's obstinate carriage, square coat, square legs, square shoulders, nay, his very neckcloth trained to take him by the throat with an unaccommodating grasp, like a stubborn fact, as it was all had the emphasis. Now, this complete paragraph tells us about where this scene is happening, what is happening in actual. It is in the schoolroom, okay, and the speaker is described as he was emphasizing on facts, and it was helped by the way his face looked like. His face was just it had a square wall of forehead, it had eyebrows, and between the eyes it had a lot of gap. These are told here. The mouth that was wide, thin, and hard set. The voice he used, the hairs he had. These all were used to describe how he was trying hard to keep the facts for the students, so that they can learn the facts only. Okay. In this life, we want nothing but facts. Sir, nothing but facts. Now again he says, we want only facts, nothing else. The speaker, the schoolmaster, and the third grown person present all begged a little. They swept with their eyes the inclined plane of little vessels then, and they arranged in order, ready to have imperial gallons of facts poured into them until they were full to the brim. Okay. Now this paragraph. Here the speaker, the schoolmaster, and the third grown person, that is the third elder person, one of them, they moved back and they swept with their eyes the inclined plane, that is they looked around everyone, and then they thought of pouring on the facts to them. Okay, this is what we are talking about, the classroom, the scenario in the classroom where the students are sitting and somebody is talking over there. Okay. Thomas Gradgrind, sir, a man of realities, a man of facts and calculations, a man who proceeds upon the principle that 2 and 2 are 4 and nothing over, and who is not to be talked into allowing for anything over. Thomas Gradgrind, sir, peremptorily Thomas Gradgrind, with a rule and a pair of scales and the multiplication table always in his pocket. Sir, ready to weigh and measure any parcel of human nature and tell you exactly what it comes to. It is a mere question of figures, a case of simple arithmetic. You might hope to get some other nonsensical belief into the head of George Gradgrind, or Augustus Gradgrind, or John Gradgrind, or Joseph Gradgrind, all supposititious non-existent persons, but into the head of Thomas Gradgrind, no sir. Now here a person is described whose name is Thomas Gradgrind. Okay, he was a man of reality. According to them, he was the man of reality. That is, he always loved about the facts. He, whenever you see him, you will find a rule and a pair of scales along with him, and with that a multiplication table also in his pocket. He was always ready to weigh and measure any parcel of human nature and tell you exactly what it comes from. So he could easily do everything with the arithmetics. Okay, now he uses various words, but in actual he was Thomas Gradgrind. You could say anything like George Gradgrind, Augustus Gradgrind, or John Gradgrind. All these were used for Joseph Gradgrind. Oh, sorry, Thomas Gradgrind. Okay. In such terms, Mr. Gradgrind always mentally introduced himself, whether to his private circle of acquaintance or to the public in general. In such terms, no doubt, substituting the words boys and girls for sir. Thomas Gradgrind now presented Thomas Gradgrind to the little creatures before him, who were to be filled so full of facts. Now, in actual, Mr. Gradgrind always mentally introduced himself, whether he was in his private circle of acquaintances, that is, in his private circle of friends, or to his private circle of, or to the public in general. Okay. And in such terms, he always substituted the words boys and girls with sir. He used to speak starting with sir. Okay. Indeed, as he eagerly sparkled at them from the cellarage before mentioned, he seemed a kind of cannon loaded to the muzzle with facts and prepared to blow them clean out of the regions of childhood at one discharge. He seemed a galvanizing apparatus too, charged with a grim mechanical substitute for the tender young imaginations that were to be stormed away. Now in these two paragraphs, we got to know that he is standing in the class right now, and he was ready to blow away the students over there. He was looking like he was a cannon loaded with a muzzle with facts. Okay, so he was ready to do go through the children. So in these two paragraphs, we get to know that Thomas Gradgrind was just like a cannon filled with muzzle of that is loaded to the muzzle with facts. That is, we all know that cannon is filled with the bombs. Okay, the grenades. Cannon is filled just like that. The cannon loaded with muzzle with facts that was going to blow out everybody. Okay. Now he would ask some questions and he would ask for the facts, and we don't know what the students may reply. Let us check out what he does. Girl number 20, said Mr. Gradgrind, squarely pointing with his square forefinger. I don't know that girl. Who is that girl? Sizizu. Sir, explained number 20, blushing, standing up and curtsying. Curtsying is showing some respect to your elder ones. Sizi is not a name, said Mr. Gradgrind. Don't call yourself Sizi. Call yourself Cecilia. It's the father who calls me Sizi, sir, returned the young girl in a trembling voice and with another courtesy. Here, trembling means a shaking one. It's the father who calls me Sizi, sir. Like this. Okay. Now, she was trembling, but with another courtesy, she told that her father calls her Sizi. Then he has no business to do it, said Mr. Gradgrind. Tell him he must not. Cecilia Zoop, let me see. What is your father? Now he asks about the father and says, tell your father not to call you Sizi. Now, he belongs to the horse riding, if you please, sir. She tells the father is the one belonging to horse riding profession. Now, Mr. Gradgrind frowned and waved off the objectionable calling with his hand. Now, Mr. Gradgrind disagreed to this and said, we don't want to know anything about that here. That is, he don't want to know about the profession of his father, as he was a horse rider. You must not tell us about that here. Your father breaks horses, doesn't he? Now he says your father breaks horses. That is, mm, he lets the horses down. That is, horses get harmed in this. If you please, sir, when they can get any to break, they do break horses in the ring, sir. Now, what the girl says that when they get anyone to break, they do break horses in the ring, sir. That is, they also now she was asking about the fight of the father too. You must not tell us about the ring here. Very well then. Describe your father as a horse breaker. He doctors sick horses, I dare to say. Oh yes, sir. Now he says, does he doctors sick horses? Now she says yes. Now here we get to know that the ring here means she's asking she's telling about her father's profession properly, that he takes care of the harm horses. Yes, very well then. He is a veterinary surgeon, farrier and horsebreaker. Give me your definition of a horse. Now, Gradgrind says, fine, he's a surgeon, he's a farrier. Farrier is a person who takes care of horse legs, horse shoes, that those iron-made U-shaped shoes that are placed under the horse legs. Okay. Now he says, give me a definition of a horse. Now he asks for the definition of horse. No. Sisu thrown into the greatest alarm by this demand. Girl number 20 is unable to define a horse, said Mr. Gradgrind, for the general behoof of all the little creatures. Girl number 20 possessed of no facts in reference to one of the most commonest of animals. Some boy's definition of a horse, Bitzer, yours. Now he says that girl number 20 don't know how to describe a horse. She don't know the definition of horse, and it is one of the most common animals on the earth, and still she can't define it. Now he says, fine, I want the answer from some boys. Now he puts finger towards Bitzer. Now he asked Bitzer to answer this. The square finger moving here and there lighted suddenly on Bitzer, perhaps because he chanced to sit in the same ray of sunlight which, darting in at one of the bare windows of the intensely whitewashed room, irradiated Sissy. Now the finger moved from Gradgrind and it stopped towards Bitzer. Why? Maybe because he was sitting in the same row where the sunlight from the window was passing through. The sunlight passed through from the girl Sissy and towards Bitzer. So he was pointed out there. Okay. 4. The boys and girls sat on the face on the inclined plane in two compact bodies divided up the center by a narrow interval, and Sissy, being at the corner of a row on the sunny side, came in for the beginning of a sunbeam, of which Bitzer, being at the corner of a row on the other side, a few rows in advance, got the end. Now we are told that about the sitting positions of Sissy and Bitzer. Okay. But whereas the girl was so dark-eyed and dark-haired that she seemed to receive a deeper and more lustrous color from the sun, and light-haired that the self-same when it shone upon her, the boy was so light-eyed and light-haired that the self-same rays appeared to draw out of him with little color he ever possessed. Now it says that the girl possessed dark color, dark eyes and everything, and comparing to the boy was very light colored, and it seemed that the rays were coming out of the boy only. Okay. His cold eyes would hardly have been eyes but for the short ends of lashes which, by bringing them into immediate contrast with something paler than themselves, expressed their form. Now he had very cold eyes, that is very little eyes, and they were just showing their presence, that's all. His short cropped hair might have been a mere continuation of the sandy freckles on his forehead and face. His skin was so unwholesomely deficient in the natural tinge that he looked as though if he were cut, he would bleed white. Now here it is shown that his eyes were also not dark, they were very light colored, and even the short cropped hairs were matching the color of the tone of his skin, that is very light colored. Freckles means very light brown. Okay. So this was imagine that if he were to cut, he would bleed white. Okay. Bitzer, said Thomas Gradgrind, your definition of a horse. Now he asked the same question. Quadruped, graminivorous, 40 teeth, namely 24 glandus, 4 eye teeth, and 12 incisors. Now he says quadruped, that is 4 leg. Graminivorous eats grass only. Okay, eats grass and herbs, such things. 40 teeth, and now he names the teeth differently. Okay. Sheds coat in the spring, in marshy countries, sheds hoofs too. Hoofs hard but requiring to be shod with iron. Now he explains about the horse. Okay. Hoofs here are the lower part of these animals, as you must have seen in the buffalo, in the cows, in the goat, horses. They are the some harder part of the lower leg. Okay. But required to be shod with iron, and it is telling us that the horse lower part, that is the lower part of the leg, that is the harder one, hoof, should be shod with iron, that is an iron is placed under that hoof. Age known by marks in mouth. Okay, thus Blitzer. Now he described the horse as the facts. Okay. Now girl number 20 said Mr. Gradgrind, you know what a horse is? Now he says, now you got to know what a horse actually is. She curtsied again and would have blushed deeper. If she could have blushed deeper than she had blushed all this time. Bitzer, after rapidly blinking at Thomas Gradgrind with both eyes at once, and so catching the light upon his quivering ends of flashes that they looked like the antennae of busy insects, put his knuckles to his freckled forehead and sat down again. Now the girl was blushing. She wanted to blush deeply, but if she could have, but she didn't. She stopped. Now Bitzer, after rapidly blinking, that is moving your eyes up and down. Okay, blinking your eyes. Now he was blinking the eyes again and again because the catching light was quivering upon the ends of flashes, because the direct sunlight was coming onto his eyes, and finally he sat down again. So this was the chapter from the English reader book. The name of the chapter, that is section 1, is hard times. Let's move on to the question answers as we have read the chapter. Okay. The speaker, first question, A part, read and answer. The speaker's square forefinger emphasized his observations. On which particular word does the speaker lay emphasis? How did the speaker emphasize his observations? The speaker emphasized on facts. He emphasized his observations by underscoring every sentence with a line on the schoolmaster's sleeve. What were the things or mannerisms that helped the speaker lay emphasis? The emphasis was held by the speaker's square wall of forehead, which had his eyebrows for its base, while his eyes found commodious cellarage in two dark caves overshadowed by the wall. The emphasis was held by the speaker's mouth, voice, hair, etc. In all, it was held by the speaker's looks and clothes he wore. Second question. Describe Mr. Gradgrind with reference to his appearance and his behavior. The A part is for appearance. Thomas Gradgrind was a person full of facts. He always carried a rule and a pair of scales to weigh and measure any parcel of human nature and tell you exactly what it comes to. Okay. His behavior, Thomas Gradgrind always presented himself as a person of facts. He seemed to be a kind of cannon loaded with a muzzle with facts. Okay. Describe Bitzer's appearance. Bitzer was a light brown skin colored boy. His eyes were light colored, had cropped hairs that too matched with his skin color. He was so pale colored that if he were cut, he would bleed white. In what words did Bitzer define a horse? What is unusual about his definition? Bitzer defines a horse as a quadruped graminivorous 40 teeth animal, describing the teeth separately as glandus, incisors, etc. He also described it as an animal that sheds coat in springs, sheds hoofs. It was an unusual thing to describe a horse in such a manner, as there are a lot of animals to have same characteristics as told by Bitzer for the horse. The definition was common for a lot of animals. Okay, so this was very unusual one. Now think and answer. First question. He seemed a galvanizing apparatus to charged with a grim mechanical substitute for the tender young imagination that were to be stormed away. A part. What do you think he was charged with? He was charged with the facts that he wanted to be filled within the students sitting in the class. B part. Why do you think the author used the phrase stormed away? The author uses the phrase stormed away as the author wants to showcase the condition of the times when students were forced to learn the facts instead of reality. Second part. Second question, sorry. To what are the children in the class being compared to? What does it tell you about the education system during that time? The children are compared to little pitchers. This shows that the education system during that time was forcefully applying the fact-based education irrespective of what a student should actually be taught. Now reference to context. Its father who calls me Sisi. That's a typing mistake, sorry. Where is Sisi at this time? Whom is she speaking to? The first question. Sisi is standing in front of Mr. Thomas Berglin. And where is she? She is in the classroom. Why does she say this? She answers the question about her name asked by Mr. Thomas. What is Sisi's father? He belongs to horse riding profession. Okay. How does the listener of the above lines describe the profession of Sisi's father? The listener above describes the profession as horse breaker. So students, that's all for the chapter. We'll meet you in the next video. And before ending the video, please like the video, subscribe the channel, and get the latest videos from the school. Thank you.